SuperTalk Mississippi Media production.
Discover Covington County Hospital's swing bed program, offering comprehensive care for patients transitioning from acute hospital care to home. With a focus on rehabilitation, we ensure a smooth journey back to your home environment. Choose Covington County Hospital, where your health care matters.
This is an encore presentation of the best of Mornings with Richard Cross.
Let's try that one more time. Welcome again. Mornings with Richard Cross, SuperTalk Mississippi. Glad to be with you and would love to hear from you. You can join the conversation on the C Spire text line. A lot of interaction that you have had this morning. We'll try to get to some of your messages. 601-879-4395. In sports and business, having the right team behind you matters. Partner with C Spire today for business solutions from dedicated, certified IT engineers. Learn more at cspire.com. C Spire, inspired by you. You know that it is getting close to that time of year. You know what that time of year is at SuperTalk Mississippi? It's Radiothon. Palmer Home for Children Radiothon. That is coming up on July 10th, and we are already thinking about it and hope you will as well. We'll talk a little bit more about that and the other things that are happening at Palmer Home. Madison Drake joins us this morning. Madison, good morning.
Good morning, Richard. Thank you so much for having us today.
Absolutely. Always good to see you and good to catch up and learn about the things that are happening. You're Director of Development for Northeast Mississippi and Alabama, and it's interesting to me, first of all, that the footprint is growing, that this is not just a Mississippi thing, but there are people that are in other states that are seeing the powerful work that's happening at Palmer Home.
Oh, absolutely. We've really expanded our service lines over the last 15 years or so. So I would say we've grown into more of what we do serves a much larger region through our family care program. I serve newborns of incarcerated mothers. This actually came to us because we took over a nonprofit that's based out of Nashville, and we work with mothers of incarcerated newborns and basically work to find them foster families who kind of work as almost in a grandparent type role, if you will. And so that's something that, we are doing in Tennessee, and we'd like to kind of bring that into the state of Mississippi. So that's one thing that is pretty exciting for us. That's one way that we've expanded. But, of course, our roots are right here in Mississippi. We started right in Columbus, and right now our campus is located in Hernando. So that footprint really is Mississippi being the heart of our home.
This is a fun time of year. We always have the opportunity to see what's happening at Palmer Home during the summer, and it feels like all fun. The school year is like normal for other kids, but I know all the kids at Palmer Home, they get excited about the summer, their trips, their camps, their sports activities, and there's a little bit of time for them to unplug as well.
Oh, absolutely. And it was 3 Fridays ago we call it our awards day, and it's an awards day just as you would imagine at any school, but we do this for our children on campus at Palmer Home. And let me tell you, it is one of the most fun days that we have throughout the season, because not only are we celebrating our graduates, which we had quite a few this year. We had a wonderful graduation rate. We actually had 5 high school and college graduates, but we're able to honor our children who really went above and beyond. Some of the kids who come to us, they may come to us a few grades behind where they're supposed to be, and these are kids who have worked extremely hard to overcome this difference, and now they're earning A's, B's, maybe even straight A's. And so this is an opportunity for us to honor them, make them feel so great about themselves, and just really know the hard work and what they've overcome to achieve those goals, and just to celebrate and get ready for summer. And like you said, summertime is so much fun on campus at Palmer Home. We actually just had a group get back last week from what we call On River Time. We partner with another nonprofit, And we have a group of kids ages 12 to 18. Drake Bassett, our CEO, he goes alongside with them, and they go to Irwin, Idaho, and they are able to take a fishing trip down the Snake River for a week. And I mean, a really incredible opportunity. I mean, I'd love to do that myself.
Yeah, why am I not surprised that Drake says, hey, I'm going to go along for this one. I want to make sure that these kids are getting the full experience. We're going to go to Idaho and go fishing. That sounds right up his alley.
What an experience, though. It's just something that our children really look forward to, though, and just something that, an opportunity that they're all really excited to kick off their summer with that. And, they finish awards day. They've studied hard. Many have graduated. Many are going to college, some may join in the military. Some may be going to trade school, you name it. And some are just, trying to get to 4th or 5th grade and doing the best they can. And this is such a fun opportunity for them, and not to mention just the usual, swimming on campus, fishing on campus. We've got canoes everywhere. There's so much to do on and off campus, and we're so excited that we can provide those opportunities to these children.
Madison, how long have you been at Palmer Home now?
I've been at Palmer Home for almost 2 years, so I'm new as far as these things go. But I've actually been affiliated with Palmer Home both as a volunteer and through different ways my whole life, as long as I can remember. And Palmer Home's been around for 130 years. Yeah. We just celebrated our 130th anniversary, so it's one of the just a staple nonprofit in my life, a charitable organization that has been here and has served so many children that I feel like everybody in Mississippi at least has some connection or some affiliation with Palmer Home over the years, and I'm one of those people.
Yeah, and that's actually what I wanted to get at. So when we started Radiothon, and I guess this is year 13.
I actually had 13. Yes, I think it started in 2012.
So this is year 13, and I've admitted many times I didn't know anything about Palmer Home. I mean, it was based in Columbus. It was 2 hours from my driveway, and yet I didn't know anything about it. Obviously, it's changed for me, but I feel like it's changed for a lot of people across Mississippi, and maybe Radiothon has some to do with that, but some of it is with the efforts from the staff there as well. Do you feel like there is more recognition and name ID for Palmer Home than maybe there was a decade ago?
Absolutely, I think so. And I know some of that has to do with as we started in Columbus, and that really was the heart of our home, because that's where everything Palmer Home began, and we're so thankful for those roots. Well, we've been able to maintain that support, and thankfully our friends in East Mississippi and the Golden Triangle have continued to support our growth, but they also recognize the need for growth. And that opportunity is where we went we were able to move to our current campus in Hernando. And I think that a big part, and SuperTalk is I meet with a lot of people every week, and SuperTalk is the number one reason that people who, say, from the Delta or somebody who was completely unfamiliar with Palmer Home in the past, 9 times out of 10, that's going to be the reason that they give me, that they were able to hear about Palmer Home, learn more. And I think this is really neat just from Radiothon alone. In the last 12 years since Radiothon started, we have raised $3,110,434. That's what SuperTalk support for Palmer Home has been able to do for our children. And so we can't express our gratitude both in that support and just getting our name out there. It's beyond what we could have ever imagined.
So Radiothon is a special day, and it's an opportunity for people across the state of Mississippi to give. And as you just illustrated, people have been so incredibly generous over the last decade plus with that. But part of your job as director of development is not just one-day giving or impulsive giving, which is so incredibly great, but more planned giving, estate planning, making part of what you individually do philanthropically, making that an ongoing thing. So how is that working, and what do people need to do if maybe they're looking to expand their philanthropic giving?
Absolutely, and that's such a wonderful question that so many people don't. It seems, the obvious gift is to make a gift that day, but a lot of times we have people who want to work with their accountants, work with their we help with their wealth management and make a more strategic plan as they're giving. And that's kind of where we come in to help as development officers. We're able to kind of help you work with the people, the professionals that you work with to plan these gifts. And we can work with you. I know we've talked in the past about Children's Promise Act and tax credits that you can get through the state, where if you own a business or as an individual, you can make a donation and receive a tax credit through various charitable organizations. The way you can do that through the Department of Revenue, through the state of Mississippi. It's a really amazing program. That's one way. You can also, of course, with estate planning and things such as that, we can always work with you, sit down and kind of make that easier for you so that moving forward you can be more strategic in that planned giving effort. But that's kind of where we work, is to make that easy, but ultimately to benefit the children of Palmer Home and to make sure that legacy gift sustains us for 130 more years.
Madison, it's great catching up with you. If you want to talk to Madison or somebody else in the development department, easiest way is just to go to the website, palmerhome.org. You can find their contact information. Look forward to seeing you, and thanks so much.
Yes. Thank you so much, Richard. We appreciate it so very much.
Madison Drake, she's Director of Development at Palmer Home for Children for Northeast Mississippi and Alabama. We will be on campus for the annual Palmer Home for Children Radiothon on SuperTalk Mississippi.
Best of Mornings with Richard Cross. This is an encore presentation of the Best of Mornings with Richard Cross.
We're back. Thanks for joining us. C-Spire text line open, 601-879-4395. Thomas, I love you. He sent me a message. He said, which audio is real, PBS or Fox News? It was, it maybe even have been the inauguration. And it was a shot of President Trump, and in the PBS clip, you hear very muted applause in the background and a little bit of catcalling. And in the Fox News clip, you hear not like thunderous applause. Oh, this was at the military birthday. But a very big, full ovation. And he said, which one's real? I don't know if he likes my answer or not. Neither of them is fake. It's an audio mix issue. Both of those entities are taking feeds from all the audio channels that are available, and then they're mixing them for their production the way they want to. PBS is going to have a more subdued production than Fox is going to, for reasons that are both obvious and not so obvious. The obvious is they're not propping up Trump necessarily, and you know how a lot of the people at public broadcasting feel, whereas Fox is going to do a lot of that. The other is general production philosophy, like what they believe a production should actually sound like. Not everything is a conspiracy. Some stuff is, not everything is. Isn't that right, Senator Daniel Sparks, who joins us this morning
that's
in
correct.
Studio? Always thankful for the time. Good morning to you.
Good morning to you. I tried to make sure I match shirts with you there. I've got my Sanderson Farms shirt on. Looks like you're sporting
your Reveal,
today.
Revel
so.
or Reveal, whatever his name is. I love that little logo.
You talking about the chicken?
Yeah, the chicken. Let me see.
The chicken's a great logo.
There we go.
I would say that in all of sports, the Sanderson Farms Championship has had the best trophy.
Yes. You
just put that big old rooster trophy on the mantle, bronze thing, weighs a bunch. Is it Reveille? Is that the name?
Yeah, that's what I was saying. Revel or Reveille or Reveal, yeah.
Yeah, there we go. Daniel Sparks represents parts of Itawamba, Prentiss, and Tishomingo counties. He's chair of the Economic and Workforce Development Committees, vice chair of Judiciary B. How's your summer?
It's good. I can't complain. Just trying to work and juggle, and like a lot of people in Mississippi, trying to keep the yard grass cut just because of the rain that we've had. But it's been good. Doing a few conferences. Was in Chicago a couple weeks ago. have some things coming up on the Gulf Coast, trying to get out and get educated a little bit, understand, speaking to some groups. I've talked to several on PERS. We had our PERS Board of Trustees meetings the last 2 days. That's every other month. We meet a couple times and trying to make sure that we get implemented the new legislation and get stability to the system and make sure that we're honoring the obligations to the people that are working today and those that will be retiring tomorrow.
Yeah, so, I mean, I feel like that's probably where we need to spend a little bit of time. PERS was talked about a lot this past session. It's going to continue to be talked about, but I think we've got two different conversations, right? The changes to the system that go in effect in 5 days, right? July 1st, just around the corner, and those are going to affect new hires. But then also the liability of PERS in the years down the road, which is not so different than the conversation that we got about Social Security at the national level that says, 2034 is the last year they're going to be able to pay out Social Security. So, I hope you're saving money on your own as well. That's probably not a bad plan. In terms of the changes that go into effect, what do people need to be reminded of?
Well, the first thing is nothing changes for Tier 1 through 4. That's something from time to time I think people are...
Which means if you're in the system today...
Yes.
Okay.
That's your benefits, that's your service credit, leave, whatever rights, privileges that you have, you retain, and that was very important, I believe, everyone in the legislature, is again to honor that commitment. Tier 5, we have a couple things. There are some
How many times, by the way, did you have to say that during the legislative session when the PERS process was going on? This is about the future. It's not about the past. Nothing changes if you're in it, and have people not hear you, listen to you, understand.
It is very concerning because, I said it numerous times, couldn't name it, but still I'll have people walk up to me and they'll say, well, so this changes on this issue. I'm like, no, it does not change. And we had a pretty, hearty dialogue yesterday about making sure there's not misrepresentation. There's some folks that don't care for Tier 5. They don't care for the changes. They didn't want anything to change, even though we were $26.5 billion underfunded. And, I just don't want them to misrepresent what it actually does. What we do see is July 1, there are some things that change with ORP. March 1st of 2026 is actually the Tier 5 for folks that are in the PERS side of the equation. When they come in and they'll have the hybrid style, part defined benefit, part defined contribution. But the key thing is we're going to honor those obligations, and we've also put $110 million a session ago, not this past session. And, I understand the speaker has put together a working group or a committee to look at PERS funding. The lieutenant governor had offered 3 or 4 different types of cash infusions. I personally want to see a large cash infusion because if we put, just say $500.
What's large?
To me, it's $500 million. I think if you put $500 million in, and I had an amendment ready to go during the special session, but then I tried to honor the agreement that had been made between the House and Senate and the governor that all 3 parties had reviewed all of the budgets and they had come to an agreement, so we weren't going to change anything. So I held on that. But the reason I say that is because that money put into PERS would generate 7% as their anticipated rate of return, which that's $35 million. Then that would grow exponentially as you move through the years. That and some other reforms we've done, we'll see $100 million.
Can I interrupt you for
Sure.
an accounting question? If you borrow money, you have principal and interest, and you have a monthly payment that is due, and that goes to a combination of the two. But you can always, or at least on most loans, you can make a principal payment. Like you're paying your monthly mortgage, and you're like, hey, I've got an extra, $10,000 that you won from the lottery, and you want to throw that toward the principal. If you put $500 million toward the PERS liability, can that go to the principal versus the interest, or does that question even make sense? Is there a difference?
It's a very good question. It's different in the sense that an unfunded actuarial liability is a created future liability. These are streams of payments in the future. So it's not like debt that the federal government has or debt like you and I would understand with a mortgage, but it's the same principle when the actuaries calculate what they think we should be putting toward the system. So it does matter, but the big thing for me is we're talking about streams of revenue, and I'm all for looking for streams of revenue. I don't like diverting. I didn't like diverting from MDOT, which was the lottery funds, $80 million and $20 million from educational enhancement funds. That was an HB1. I didn't agree with that piece, so we didn't go that route. But certainly we needed reform, and we need dollars, and the source of those dollars, if you've got CapEx money that you can put into it, that's beneficial because that's done today. But then you go back to the compounding interest side, that growth year over year is amazing what you would see. And that's why it's so sad no one put money in it. With that $500 million, I mean, using your number, if you took that $500 million and set it aside, that would be for investment purposes, right? That's correct.
You theoretically should mirror them. And I don't know if it's as simple as index funds or whatever, but I mean, that rule of eights, I guess it is, where that money doubles every 8 years. I mean, that goes from 500 to $1 billion to 2 to 4 over the course of kind of this liability period that we've talked about.
And it makes a serious dent. And one of the things yesterday, 7% is the anticipated rate of return, which also impacts how the liability is calculated and how much money they're asking for. And it was either 9.34 or 9.84 is the fiscal year to date through like June 23. So it appears, unless we have a terrible event in the market in the next week, that we're going to exceed the anticipated rate of return by 2 points or greater. So that is tremendous.
What did you say one more time that anticipated return was?
It's 7. That's what the actuaries have chosen, and that's what the board has adopted. But we've historically had 8.13 over 30 years. And we're going to be over 9 this year, it appears. So, I'm very proud of that and excited about that, because when you have $35 billion under management, making an extra 2 points matters. So.
And I think what you just said is important for people to hear also, because it's a future liability that we're talking about, but there's $35 billion there to pay out what is currently owed on a month-to-month basis.
That's correct. Yeah, the checks are coming, I can assure you.
Yeah. And for a long time. Like, even if you didn't put in another penny, this money lasts for a while, and there is money that's coming in every month.
Well, it's the obligation. We owe it, and we intend to pay it.
Yeah. Daniel Sparks is a state senator. He's with us in studio this morning, hitting a bunch of different topics with him. We'll continue that coming up next. It's Mornings with Richard Cross, SuperTalk Mississippi. Thanks for being with us.
More of the best of Mornings with Richard Cross.
For a flipping good time.
Encore presentation of the best of Mornings with Richard Cross.
He turned to me as if to say, hurry boy, it's waiting there for you.
Thanks for being with us. I like a little Toto. Senator Daniel Sparks joining me in studio, represents District 5, Itawamba, Prentiss, Tishomingo Counties, Chair of Economic Development and Workforce Committees, and Vice Chair of Judd B. as well. On that economic development front, I mean, you want to talk about a busy time over the last 6 months, year and a half, with the things that are coming into the state of Mississippi at such an incredibly rapid pace, partnerships that are happening between universities and military installations. We talked this morning about the one between Mississippi State and Keesler on the meteorology front. It's just kind of coming fast and furious, almost to the point that it's hard to keep up with.
Yes, I am very excited. It's a great time to be chair of economic workforce development. I will say the work that was done, before I got to the Mississippi legislature is what set a lot of this up. Mm-hmm. I'll be going, my companion over in the House is Donnie Bales, the chair of economic workforce development. We'll be speaking at the MEDC conference in July. That's your site development grant group through MDA. We've invested money in these sites. Bill Cork and the team at MDA, Governor Reeves, et cetera, we have these announcements. But the work that they do, they've, particularly Bill and his team, been all over the globe in the last, couple of weeks. Mississippi is certainly open for business. It has a great tax regulatory environment, cost of living, the education system. We're working together better, I think, with our college and universities and community colleges with understanding what we need in the state of Mississippi, not just to train our own people, but to recruit people to work in the state of Mississippi. And a lot of that goes back to the creation of Accelerate, Dr. Courtney Taylor and her team over there being the coach, if you will, of workforce, because there's so many different pots of money that we look at to train people, some from the federal government, some from the state. And she was up in D.C. recently. There's new legislation relating to the WIOA funds, the Workforce Initiative funds, our Workforce Enhancement Training funds. And I just really do believe, and I really do give the governor a lot of credit, is that they have put this together in a manner that the wins keep coming. It's not, hey, we worked really hard for 2 years. We made this huge economic development announcement. The hits just keep coming. People are expanding and growing. And one of the key points of that is energy. We have available energy in this state. That was a key driver in recruiting AWS and some of these other individuals. And I think that's something to go back to what you were talking about earlier before I came on the air, is, having energy independence in this country is so valuable, because I remember in 1979, 1980, when we were having the issues with Iran, how that, the administration at that time, had a completely different attitude of, well, let's just turn the thermostat down and put the sweater on. And from the conservative and the Republican side, they have been able to lead the United States towards energy independence so that we don't see this huge spike in gas prices just because there's something going on in the Middle East. And it's always to the point when, Iran threatened to close the Strait of Hormuz, it wasn't the United States saying, oh, no, our prices will go up. It was China, calling and saying, let's not do that. So I think we're in such a better position globally, and that trickles down to the states that are willing to embrace that, because we have states that are not embracing energy independence. We have states that are not embracing growth of businesses, and that's Mississippi's benefit. So, we've prepared. They've done the foundational groundwork. They continue to be good communicators. And again, working with the folks at the economic development side of the coin, it's exciting right now in Mississippi.
Let me ask you this, and this is a question that we regularly get. We hear from people in Southwest Mississippi, and we sometimes hear from the Mississippi Delta. In fact, Robert Johnson was on with me earlier this week, and he was talking about the fact that money is not distributed equally among counties in Mississippi and how much certain money would mean for other. On the economic development and economic projects front, we've seen a lot of these projects in a lot of different places. We haven't seen a bunch of them in Southwest Mississippi or the Mississippi Delta. Is that a function, maybe I should just say, what is that a function of? And the secondary part of this is I know there are resources that are available for workforce development in those parts of the state. Is there a willingness within the workforce in that part of the state?
First of all, yes, I think there is a willingness with the workforce in that part of the state, and I did listen to the interview, and I thought it was very interesting. Your question back was, the congressional delegation. Of course, he pivoted to bigger bills. But you were asking a specific question, is how is the congressional delegation, particularly when you had Democratic control, you had Democratic president, that there's not huge announcements during that period of time. So I think that, there's great concern of what goes on west of 55. And Representative Johnson and I have talked about this. I actually held a meeting last year in Cleveland when we were dealing with our workforce participation study committee, and we had these discussions. There are people that are in the Delta region that are riding a bus 2 hours to go to Memphis to work at FedEx, or to even come into maybe to Canton to work at Nissan. Yeah. And we need those development opportunities, but you need willing partners in local government. We just had municipal elections, and I tell you, speaking to all the folks across the state of Mississippi that are representing these municipalities, it is a partnership with the state, with the federal, with the county officials, and the more difficulties you have functioning as a team, the harder it is to recruit business, because business doesn't want to come in and hear, well, the city agrees, but the county doesn't, or the state's not working with the city. We don't get along. I'm excited.
Hey, and that's not unique to Delta County. That's all over the state of Mississippi.
100%. And so, a business does not want to hear that. They want to hear that people are on the same sheet of music. I'm excited. My colleague, Senator Horn, going to be sworn in as the mayor of Jackson. We have some partners that we can work with, and that is a focus for me. I do believe it's a focus for MDA and the site development team, and those discussions, certainly have been had. One of the things with AWS, there was serious investment as it relates to some of the counties in that region that will see ad valorem tax increases without the need of a trained or trainable workforce in that scenario. The other thing is we have a great need for construction trades, for skilled labor in electricity, in plumbing, things of that magnitude, because when AWS came in, we had to hire people from out of state to come do that work.
Right.
So that's one of the key focuses that we have right now, is what can we do to train our Mississippians? And if we have a region in that particular area, for example, that we're not having a lot of new business locate, can we train the people in that region to make a wonderful living? Because, you have those skill sets. You can travel. There are companies that use like a traveling nurse. It's almost like a traveling electrician, a traveling plumber. So we are really focused on that and trying to be a good partner with them. But yes, that is heard. That is something that I think is important. And one of the things that we're working on this summer is a one-door policy, which we passed a bill to address that. Again, it's something that the federal government would give the state of Mississippi. Louisiana is looking for that, opportunity to do it as well, is where when people come in, and I have a meeting later today on this, when people come into the state to ask for assistance, that we open them up to all the opportunities that are there for them. So if someone comes in seeking, SNAP benefits, is that all we're going to do, is just take your information and see, do you qualify for SNAP? Or are we going to try to, as a state, because you're asking the state or the federal government to fund part of your life, is to say, is there a way that we can get you to economic independence? What is your educational situation? What barriers are there for you? Can we get you an adult ed program?
But that's a two-part process, right?
Yes,
there has to be an interest in, because there's some people that are like, yeah, I just want my check, or I just want the benefits, leave me alone, I'm content living this way, while there are others who genuinely want that. Like, they would prefer not to have to go to the unemployment office or to a SNAP benefits office if there was a route to economic independence, as you described it.
That's correct, and that's one of the reasons we need a one-door style policy, or at least that data and technology, because if you tell me I just want my check and I don't want to do anything else, we need to know that, because, now I have somebody who's saying my constituents can't get any help. And if I'm saying, right, here's the data, we literally offered adult ed, we offered this. And in today's world and technology with AI and the other things that are coming in, I think we can do a better job directing services so that we spend less money as a state, but we spend it more effectively. And the thing that I just repeatedly say to our colleges, to our, K-12, whoever it may be, it's return on investment, it's ROI. We don't want people just to have a job. We want them to have a good job. And to do that, we need to be able to train them, and we do need interest on both sides. You're correct.
Yeah. We'll finish up with Daniel Sparks, Senator from District 5 on the other side of this. We're going to hit on community colleges just for a second. That is an area that is passionate to him. It's also an area that Lieutenant Governor has said he is going to place a significant amount of emphasis going into next year's session with that last dollar program. Talk a little bit more about that when we come back. Mornings with Richard Cross on SuperTalk Mississippi.
More of the best of Mornings with Richard Cross next. An encore presentation of the best of Mornings with Richard Cross.
I'm sensing a theme in the music, Lance.
I'm getting prepared for my trip to the Straits of
Persian Gulf vacation.
Exactly. Got Toto, and then, walk like an Egyptian from the Bengals.
Yeah. Quickly, as we rejoin Daniel Sparks one last time, during the breaks, I've been watching some of this Pete Hegseth and General Kane press conference. And General Kane was just outlining. So Monday, and we know that Iran kind of gave us a heads up that the strikes were coming, which was certainly helpful. But they had abandoned the Al Udeid Air Base in Qatar, except for 22 soldiers. We had 22 personnel members still on that base. That's Forward CENTCOM Command in the Middle East. And they had only 2 of the Patriot battery missile defense systems. Said the oldest soldier on base was 28 and the youngest was 21. There were 22 of them in total left to defend the entire base. And they crushed it. They knocked all those missiles out of the sky.
It's amazing what they can do, and there's just not the words to express the appreciation. And we don't always understand certainly what they and their families go through, but they are the reason that the United States has the standing in the world it does with its military, and it allows the negotiations and it allows the talkers to talk because they do the walk. So it matters. And
Senator Sparks, I said something earlier this week that I feel like has not been talked about enough. The reputation of the United States military has taken a beating over the last few years, and I felt like this was an opportunity for our military to kind of stand back and look in the mirror and flex a little bit, and not only remind the rest of the world that we're still on top, but maybe remind ourselves that we are.
Well, I go back to 79 again. We had the failed mission to try to rescue the hostages. It looked really bad from a military standpoint as far as how we were viewed. We were telling people we just couldn't do anything about energy. We couldn't do anything about inflation. I mean, it was hope was gone, and that's why I think the Reagan administration, as it's remembered now 40-some-odd years later, as no administration is perfect, it was a dawn of a new day. There was hope in America, and that's what we're so thankful when we have leadership like that in the military is, again, they allow us to sit back and say, man, it's an awesome time to be proud of them and the work that they do.
Absolutely. All right, I said we talk about community colleges just for a minute. The lieutenant governor has talked about trying to reintroduce that last dollar bill next year that will make sure that after all of the other financial aid options are exhausted, the state will pay for the remainder of community college for Mississippi residents that want to go that route. Your colleagues, do you sense support for this legislation? Obviously, it didn't end up going through this year.
Well, I mean, I certainly, like to see the opportunity where Mississippians are getting educated, particularly at our community colleges. I attended Northeast Mississippi Community College. I represent the home campuses of Northeast and ICC. Mm-hmm. It's very important on the economic development front.
Is that hard? Because there's a rivalry there.
Oh, it's very hard. There's a great story one day about I might have gotten thrown out of the football game at Etowamba when I was playing with Northeast, but story for another day.
Okay.
But the reality of it is, I go back to ROI, like I said earlier. I don't want education for education's sake anymore. We went through this with our universities for a long time, and if I dangle something out and just say it's free, come have some of it, Our community colleges are skilled educational institutions. This needs to be targeted. It needs to be for people, again, willing participant. As you said earlier, there are programs that we're putting in place. Again, talking with Accelerate recently, there's a $2 million investment going into Northeast that's training equipment. We're trying to put the right equipment in front of people. We're raising their earning capacity. Northrop Grumman, speaking of defense, in my district is one of the largest employers, and Northeast has a great working relationship there. They're hiring people right now. I shared something this week. They're having a hiring fair. And the thing about our community colleges, too, they're educating people who probably stay in the state of Mississippi. So I'm a strong proponent and advocate of our community colleges. But I can also tell you this, at ICC and at Northeast for years now, last dollar tuition, there's been no tuition because partnerships with business, with industry, our county boards of supervisors, they have put up the money to be that last dollar. So I want to be cautious when we start talking about last dollar. If I say we're going to pay the last dollar,
is there actually a need for it?
Well, it's not the need. Does the price go up? Because if I promise you I'll just pay for the last dollar, what happens is the dollars get bigger and bigger. So, we do need to be conscientious of that. I understand and I agree with what the Lieutenant Governor is pursuing, and that's to help Mississippians get education beyond K-12 that raises their earning capacity. Mm-hmm. But again, working together with our career coaches, targeting it, I want the ROI. I want us to be efficient. I want us to be accountable, and we're spending taxpayer dollars. Let's make sure we're getting the right result.
One of the great things right now in Mississippi, as we run out of time, is that if you are graduating high school or you are graduating from a community college or you are graduating from college, there are jobs available, and not just like entry-level, barely getting by salary jobs. There are good jobs available right now, right here in the state of Mississippi. Senator Daniel Sparks, thanks as always for your time.
Thank you so much for having me, Richard.
Mornings with Richard Cross.
More of the best of Mornings with Richard Cross next. The encore presentation of the best of Mornings with Richard Cross.
Mornings with Richard Cross on SuperTalk Mississippi. This afternoon on In a Mississippi Minute with Steve Azar, you'll hear an interview with singer and guitarist Ron Flint. In a Mississippi Minute with Steve Azar, presented by Superior Catfish. Remember, there's catfish, and then there's Superior Catfish. U.S. farm-raised catfish with homegrown flavor. Ask for it by name at your favorite store or restaurant, and go to SuperiorCatfish.com for more information. C-Spire text line is open to you, 601-879-4395, 601-879-4395. Ready for your winning strategy? Here it is. Join C-Spire. All the technology and support you need to succeed at home, at work, and everywhere else. Visit cspire.com today. C-Spire, inspired by you. I don't know that we have had a more timely guest than the gentleman that joins us right now. Baxter Kruger is director of the Mississippi Office of Homeland Security. I guess it was yesterday or 2 days ago that we found out about the arrest of an Iranian national here in the state of Mississippi, one of 11 who was arrested nationwide. Obviously, there is a lot going on in your world right now. Good morning, Baxter. Thanks so much for your time.
Well, good morning, Richard. I really enjoy being here. Thank you for that. We're glad to put out a lot of this information. I mean, there is a lot going on in around the United States and around the world right now, especially in light of these U.S. airstrikes on the Iranian nuclear assets and their retaliatory attacks on us in Qatar.
Yeah, I mentioned to Senator Sparks a second ago. I've kind of been watching the press conference that Pete Hegseth and General Kane have going during breaks this morning, and General Kane was pointing out, they abandoned the Al Udeid military base in Qatar, anticipating the strikes, and Iran gave a heads up and left just 22 servicemen and women on that base, oldest of which was 28 years old. and the defense of it was perfect. It's just incredible.
Yeah, I mean, you can't beat U.S. intelligence assets and what we're working out over there. I mean, what's been going on between the cooperation of our allies and United States military has been great.
What can you tell us about the person that was arrested, the Iranian that was arrested here in Mississippi? Because we got a bunch of messages yesterday like, hey, am I reading this right? We anticipate seeing that maybe in big cities, in places that are a little more mainstream in terms of where you would expect an illegal from a foreign country like Iran to be, and right there in Gluckstadt.
Well, it's not our investigation over at Mississippi Office of Homeland Security. We've worked closely with our federal partners throughout this entire process, as we do day in and day out. So any specifics on that investigation would have to come from them. I hate to give you that kind of answer.
Well, I thought I would try at least. I figured that's the answer I was going to get, but I thought I would at least try and see if there was any more that you could tell us on that.
Well, what I will say is that, I mean, we've had an open border for the last 4 years coming into this cycle, and that we have illegal immigrants from all over the world, military-age males from all over the world that have poured across that border and are in every city and every state in the country. And we've got to chase them down and find them and remove them. And President Trump's been doing a great job of giving us that directive, and our office has been fully supportive of that mission through Commissioner Tyndall and with Governor Reeves in their direction.
What's the working relationship right now with Homeland Security at the state level and ICE?
I'd say that we work pretty much hand in glove at this point. The resident agent in charge, he and I used to speak probably once every couple of months, maybe once a month. Now we're talking just about every week. So we're in full support of those efforts, as are most states.
How would you describe the overall mission of the Department of Homeland Security as we sit here today?
Well, I don't think that mission has changed. I mean, our job is to defend the homeland against any threats or any threats that are posed against the domestic United States. Generally speaking, between the three, Department of Defense, Department of Justice, and Department of Homeland Security, DHS bridges that gap. I mean, DOJ is focused on law enforcement, prosecutions, and criminal activity. DOD, and they're focused on international activity. We bridge that gap where something comes across the border. We have domestic terrorist groups here. We have foreign terrorist groups operating in United States soil, transnational criminal organizations, drug cartels. You've heard it all.
Tom Holman had some pretty sobering statements in the last couple of days with regard to illegals that have come into the country, terrorist threats that have come into the country over the last 4.5 years. Well, not 4.5 years. I guess there's been a 6-month slowdown, almost to nothing on that. But the 4 previous years, when he said very candidly, we don't know where these people are. That's a pretty scary proposition.
It is extraordinarily scary. It's something that keeps us up at night. We do a good job of tracking what we can track. Obviously, if you're inside the United States, you have constitutional rights, and we do not violate those rights, even in the pursuit of those who are here illegally. Now, the domestic intelligence assets that we have that are mostly through law enforcement and our fusion center, as well as the other 54 states and territories fusion centers, we try to keep an eye on things, try to see, keep an eye out. We ask citizens that if they see something, say something, they can report it through our website to local law enforcement, to their FBI field office.
Tell us a little bit more, because when people hear intelligence, I think they initially think CIA and think maybe less about local law enforcement. But talk to us a little bit more about the intelligence apparatus that exists within the United States, because generally our minds go overseas when we talk about intelligence. We're trying to gather information about things that are happening in foreign countries to protect our interests abroad. but a little bit more about the intelligence apparatus right here at home.
Well, all intelligence is information that's been gathered, analyzed, and vetted, and then is able to be pushed out with some level of certainty about events that are coming in the future or past events. So we're just verifying information so that we can do our job better.
We have heard the phrase a number of times from Pete Hegseth and General Kane and others about low confidence intelligence. Is there a process? I mean, you just mentioned vetting the intelligence. Is there a process when you are gathering information that goes from lower level all the way up to actionable intelligence?
Absolutely. And I mean, when you talk about intel or how intelligence interacts with operational capabilities, et cetera, you're really talking about time and accuracy. So depending on the level of the threat, you want to verify to a certain degree, but you've also got to balance it against time. You don't want to wait until you're 100% certain, because that certainty won't happen until after the event that you're worried about. So, yeah, low confidence, high confidence. There's a variety of levels that you look at, but you can think about it from a perspective of, like, hey, if my kid comes home from school and tells me a story that, his teacher was mean to him or something happened on the playground, well, great. If there's another kid who tells me the same thing happened and then I get a phone call from school, then that's 100%. That's pretty high level. Yeah. Low level is the kid saying, King Griffey Jr. came and visited my school today. Highly doubt it.
Did you get an autograph? Because that could take this from low level to a little more believable. If that was the case. We've talked with Sean Tyndall about this. One of the things that strikes me as better than maybe it has been in the past is interagency cooperation. Local law enforcement, federal law enforcement, state law enforcement, all pulling in the same direction. I guess to some degree there will always be turf wars, maybe a little bit. Are those less than maybe they once were?
I think so. I think, I guess about 2 years ago, myself and Colonel Davis and Colonel Maxwell, who was at the time the director of NBN, were on the Gallo show speaking about that interaction with law enforcement and working together. And over the last, I guess it was about 3 years ago, when I first started here, one of the directives that I was given by the commissioner was to break down those silos and to make sure that our relationships between other state law enforcement agencies and federal agencies and our local officers between PDs and the SOs improved. And I think that's come a long way in my tenure. I think it was already rolling forward a couple years before me to make sure that those things were working. And I'll tell you that, I talk to our federal folks all the time. I speak with our sheriffs and our chiefs. And we just had chiefs and sheriffs conference this past couple weeks, so.
That was on the coast just this past week. We talked with Jeff McCutcheon a little bit about that. We've got more coming up with Baxter Kruger. The range of responsibilities for the Department of Homeland Security, it's pretty staggering. It includes ICE, it includes Customs and Border Protection, it includes the Coast Guard, it includes FEMA. We'll talk a little bit about managing all of those operations at a state level. You're listening to Mornings with Richard Cross, SuperTalk Mississippi. Thanks for joining us online and on the go.
More of the best of Mornings with Richard Cross, next.
Patriotism is a law.
This is an encore presentation of the best of Mornings with Richard Cross.
C-Spire text line is open to you, 601-879-4395. Your team has you covered on the field. C-Spire has you covered everywhere else with the best technology for home work and on the go, backed by local 24/7 customer support. Learn more at cspire.com. C-Spire, inspired by you. Quickly want to address this on the C-Spire text line. Walter says, he said they talked yesterday, June 9th. They spoke June 6th. Don't be dishonest with your listeners. Walter in Tupelo. Makes you no better than the fake news media you supposedly dislike. Well, Walter, you're playing a game of semantics. They actually, if you want to be technical, spoke on Saturday, June 7th. It was at 1:23 a.m. There were two calls. One that wasn't answered, lasted 4 seconds. Another one that was answered. They talked for 16 minutes. Trump said they talked. Newsom said they didn't. Trump brought the receipts. If I'm off a day on the timeline, I guess that makes me fake news media. Fair enough, buddy. All right. We welcome in the Lieutenant Governor this morning right here in the state of Mississippi, Delbert Hosemann. Good morning, sir. How are you today?
Good morning. It sounds like you're in the political sphere this morning with people giving you grief about being off a day or making a quote or maybe even putting a dot in the wrong space.
Did you just make fun of me for taking a day off? Seems to be a running joke.
I'm just telling you, you need to be here every day. Something will get away from you.
That is certainly true. Things happen in a hurry. Always good to visit with you. I want us to spend the overwhelming majority of our time this morning talking about what's coming up.
Good.
I hope you will grant me one question in the rearview mirror about where we were.
All right.
What's the grade that you give to the 2025 legislative session on the whole?
You know, some of it depends on what the governor does here with some vetoes, quite frankly.
Okay.
We're waiting on some vetoes that we had discussed at the end of the session that involved some additional funding, some additional issues that arose that would harm our Medicaid reimbursement rate that would pass by the House, and the governor and I met a number of different times on getting those vetoed. I think when those get vetoed, we came out on our budget way. I thought we did an A. Very conservative, just a very small increase. We didn't even increase it by inflation. And I think the thing that gives us an A behind that is the thought. It's probably the content, the way you wrote your answer. In the old days when we were taking those exams, and the way we wrote our answer was to be careful that we had enough cash in the event that the many things that were going on with DOGE at the time and other things in the legislature, in the national legislature, that were going to cut money that was coming to Mississippi. We knew that we had cut $137 million from education and $100 million from health, and another $100 million was coming from health, and we had gotten Mississippi State University, their whole economic group up there, to give us an opinion whether we were going to have a recession. And they said we had a 40% chance of a recession. So when all of those came in, we tightened our budget. And that's difficult. And, it's obviously difficult in the national legislature. But down here, we don't print money. So we had to make sure we had enough cash. And so I think the fact that we held on to our cash, given many opportunities to spend it, quite frankly, on a lot of nice things that we might be able to use. I think that was some real backbone for your legislature this year, not to just spew out a bunch of special projects somewhere or whatever they call that, a Christmas tree bill or something, but actually sit down and say, y'all, this is, as I use Mississippi State University's economists talking, this is a noisy time for us, and we need to be watchful. Now, we continue to generate on right now. The economics are, depending on what happens with the big, beautiful bill, there's a number of different other issues that could affect us significantly. Nobody thinks we're going to get more money out of the federal government than we've been getting, and we get about 45 to 50% of our budget from the federal government. So we were at risk. And I think the legislature, the throws you see go back and forth, that happens in the normal course of events. But I think the fact that we actually held on to our money and said, okay, guys, we're going to sit 1 year. And we're not going to do a lot of things maybe that we want to, or maybe some that we should have. And I think that was important. Number of other bills, the things that went on, education bills, other things. But I thought the fact that we cold-eyed looked at the risk that was facing us from the national scene, half our budget, and decided to hold some of our cash was important.
Do you anticipate that in 2026, if special projects get funded in a way that they weren't this year, that number next year will be a 2X number, that it'll make up for the year that wasn't funded, or is this just a lost year in terms of revenue to communities and special projects?
Well, I think that, of course, I'm hopeful that the 40% depression means 60% we won't get one. So
glass half full.
Yeah, I know. I'm kind of looking at it like, well, boy, we don't have that recession. We should have extra funds. So I think it'll be another cold-eyed look at special projects and if we have the money and whatnot. Our primary, and this showed out this year, Richard, it's good you asked this question. Our primary responsibility is to take care of our education system, our highway patrol, our roads that are state roads, our government buildings, all the things that you expect us to do to run the government. That's the number one thing, and pay our employees and make sure they've got a decent retirement plan. Those are our key core. Now, when we've got additional funds, we've been cutting taxes. That's a good idea. We've cut taxes when we hadn't finished cutting taxes. So we're lowering taxes now all the way down to like 3% in the next 3 or 4 years. And so we cut taxes. Then the third thing is, if we have additional funds after we've done our core competencies and we've cut taxes, then let's help our cities out with Main Street or additional funding for infrastructure or whatever in the counties and the cities. As it turns out, we had done about $900 million of that in the last 5 years. We had that much excess money over and above our tax cuts and everything else. So the way we gave it back to taxpayers was to hopefully improve their downtown or give them a new road or give the counties money to repair their bridges and the things that we did. So those were good. When I looked at it, as of June 30th last year, about $300 million of that had not been spent. So yesterday when I was meeting with the Board of Supervisors, I was encouraging them, and I will at the Municipal League, encouraging them to spend those funds or come to the legislature and let's repurpose those. So I think it's $280 million that hadn't been spent of the roughly between $800 and $900 million. So we'll be looking at those, and hopefully those will be funds that we've already allocated that now can be spent on either another project or finishing the project we gave them the money for to start with. Going forward, I think the waterfall goes, if you use the economic analogy, the waterfall goes primary core things I'm responsible for, tax cuts, make sure people don't pay any more money than they need to, and then it falls over to these special projects. That's why they're called special projects. We're not responsible for a street in a city. The city's responsible for that. But where we can help them, it's very beneficial, I think.
Delbert Hoseman, the Lieutenant Governor, visiting with us this morning on Mornings with Richard Cross. If you've got a question you want me to try to work in, you can send it to us on the C Spire text line at 601-879-4395. Sometimes at the national level, we talk about Washington, D.C. being a bubble. And it's good for legislators to get outside the Beltway and back to their districts and understand what's going on. Similarly, I wonder if the state capitol can sometimes be a little bit of a bubble where legislators kind of get settled in and this is the way we see things within this. The question in this is, when you're not in session, how much time do you spend traveling around the state to see what it looks like in Holly Springs, in DeKalb, in Hattiesburg, in et cetera, all over the state?
Just about daily. And since we left just a couple of weeks ago, I have been in Tupelo, Starkville, Hattiesburg. Was on the coast yesterday visiting in Jackson County, as you know, Pascagoula area. I'll be in Macomb tomorrow, Woodville, Liberty. Then I'll be in Natchez tomorrow night.
And that's intentional, right?
Oh, yeah. You're right. You did right about the bubble. I don't learn anything in there. The way I learn something is I get out and in these meetings, I call them round tables, and give you an example, we're all over the state doing that, and I'll be in the Delta on Friday. So I'm going all over the state, and I ask a number of people that come in. I don't ask them what party they're in or anything else. I won't, as I say, people that are working, that may have issues with the state. Sometimes it's bankers, sometimes it's boards of supervisors, sometimes it's just regular people running a company. And we sit in a room, like yesterday, I think we had like 6 tables with about 6 or 7. I guess we had probably 40 people in there. Probably 5 or 6 of them were newly elected aldermen and mayors in Jackson County. And then some businessmen. We got a great shade company down there. I'll tell you about someday. Superior is wonderful. But anyway, I open mic. And I asked, all right, what do you need? And we talked about the port. They have some needs at their port there. And there are different needs in Pascagoula than they are in Tupelo when I met with them, or in Starkville where they can't get water and sewer outside of the city. Mayor Spruill and I met about that 2 weeks ago. So I learn a lot, and you don't learn anything in the bubble.
Visiting with Lieutenant Governor Delbert Hosemann. On the other side of the break, we'll talk about some of the things that he sees as important. We will try to hit on a reorganization of state government. There is a significant education conversation that is on the horizon, and a whole lot more. Quick time out. Mornings with Richard Cross, SuperTalk Mississippi. We're back with you right after this.
Love is like a bomb, baby, come and get it on. Living like a lover with a radar.
More of the best of Mornings with Richard Cross next.
This is an
encore presentation of the best of Mornings with Richard Cross.
Good to be with you on this. My guest right now is the Lieutenant Governor of the state of Mississippi, Delbert Hosemann. Always kind with his time. Good to be with you.
Good to see you, Richard. Welcome back from baseball.
Thank you. And I even worked in a couple of days of golf after baseball was over.
Man, you the man. I tell you what, somebody while you were gone changed the entire economic structure of NCAA.
Yes. I hope we have time to get to NIL. It's interesting to me that you have kind of dipped your toes into the NIL water.
I have. I've always been really interested in sports, and this new the new college commission that's set up by the Big Four, the ACC, Big 10, Big 12, and SEC, to run the money and police the $20.5 million that our athletes will now receive. It's just a groundbreaking time, and the issues remaining. For example, Mississippi State and Ole Miss and all those got to pay $2 million a year to pay off the $2.8 billion settlement.
Yeah,
and those kids that paid after 2016, some of them will get a check for $200,000. Average check will be $91,000. So it's a huge thing, and going forward, they basically the ones that have money are supposed to be going to now police their $20.5 million, and also
I believe that's the golden rule.
Yeah,
he who has the gold makes the rules.
That's exactly right, and they're also setting up this NIGO, which is to cover the NIL portion that basically had been used to pay players, really. So now they're going to police those, and they'll really have to be contracts to actually perform services for a third party. And I looked on the University of Cincinnati's website, and they were bragging they have 8 Fortune 500 companies in the area. So their NIL was going to be significantly large. So that's where you're going to see some differentiate themselves. And the NCAA was basically feckless on money anymore. And so there'll be, I guess they can tell you if you can kick off from the 35 or the 40 and probably hire the referees, but they're not. They're getting where they don't have any control over the money. Things change a whole lot. So, very interesting. And the reason I was interested in is that so much of our state remembers that Archie Manning from Drew and Steve McNair from down at McGee and Walter Payton played in the band in Columbia, and we all had our own boys, our own young men that we supported. Dak Prescott wasn't from here but played here. And, it's kind of our team versus your team. And with this pay for play, I think that is pretty much obviated, and it's kind of sad.
It's certainly different. There's so many directions we could go with that.
I know. The young people deserve to be paid. That's one part of it. The coaches got to be paying so much money, and the kids were getting, young people were getting nothing. So it just, the pendulum swung too far, and now
$20.5 million is the starting revenue share number.
Right.
Lion's share of that's going to go to football, then men's basketball, then whatever's left will kind of get scattered among all the other sports. And to me, the sad part is if you are in a financial crunch, there's a likelihood that some sports will be eliminated, and that means some opportunities will be eliminated as well.
I think that's right, and I think our Olympics will like the one who won the gold medal for pole vaulting was an Ole Miss track player. So
Sam Kendricks.
Yeah. And so you look, those training facilities and everything will now be under pressure. And the one thing you shouldn't look at it as just as an SEC thing, because in the Big East, they don't have football.
Right.
So now they got $20 million for St. John's basketball players. So their starting point guard will be making $2.5 million or $3 million. Our starting point guard at Mississippi State won't be able to make that much. So there's some things in there in Title IX. How do you reconcile what you're paying $1 million to $3 million to the quarterback, or $4? I've heard as much at Michigan as $10 million. You know, how are you going to reconcile $4 million for that, and the ladies' basketball team gets $300,000 for the whole team?
It's going to be interesting to see how the Title IX plays into it. The way I reconcile it is revenue generation versus a drain on resources, but I'm not sure that that's what the courts are going to feel about Title IX.
I'm hopeful that they'll give some federal. Tuberville was a leader in that, you know, because of his coaching experience.
Yeah, but he's going to be a governor now.
I know, and now he's gone. I don't know anybody up there that has the expertise or really to swing that kind of thing. Like, how are you going to reconcile all these things? Are you going to give antitrust exclusions like they do for baseball and whatnot? All of that's coming.
We could spend a really long time on this.
I know, you're going to
spend let's hold that thought for now.
You are.
Most people, as they look to the 2026 session, believe that education is going to be the biggest topic, that's going to be the thing that grabs all the headlines going into this coming session. When you and I have talked about education in the past, there have been some things that you have pointed to that are not necessarily related to school choice that you think are important within the education conversation. But more people in Mississippi are talking about the school choice piece of it and portability issues and all of those things. Where are you in that conversation? I know when we talked, I guess it was right before the session began this year, you told me that you were open to movement district to district, but not district to private, and there are just a lot of layers there.
There are, and I start, as one of our guys said, one of our senators said, we need to be kid-centric. And I think that's correct. So to me, I start with F schools. And anybody in an F school ought to be able to leave. Period. Okay. And then we ought to be able to pay. You know, when you go to another school, our $6,700 or $800 we pay doesn't cover the cost. So, the counties are putting up money and to subsidize the remaining balance of the education piece. So we pay the teachers, but there's a good bit more that goes into that. So I thought they ought to go, and we ought to be able to pay whatever the difference is. If it costs $10,000 at that district, and we were giving them $6,800, we ought to give them the rest of it. We ought to give them the other $3,200 to make sure that they're whole wherever those kids wanted to be. To get to be an F school, you really have to mess up. And you'd think people would say, well, we want to give them a chance to come back and give them a few years. Well, those kids don't have a few years. They need to be educated now. And you miss a 6th, 7th, 8th, 9th grade while they're trying to reform a school. That's up to the parent, whether they want to do that or not. But if they want to move, I think they ought to be able to move, just period. And we ought to pay for it. On portability, we have said before that a child that wants to leave shouldn't be able to be held by a district. If a mom and dad decide that they want to move their kids somewhere else, they should be able to do that.
Okay.
Then the second part of that is what we call capacity. You can't just show up somewhere and say, well, you got to cover me. It has to be where they can move to somewhere that has room for them. You don't have to have a whole nother classroom and pay a whole nother teacher or build on or anything else for 3 kids, for example. So there has to be capacity there. And I think those are the linchpins of what we're talking about here. The federal government's jumped into this some, talking about vouchers. And, of course, if they give vouchers out to everybody that has children, 90% of our kids are in public education, as you know. About 35,000 are in private schools. Figuring it's 2 per family, that'd be about
in Mississippi.
In Mississippi, that's correct.
Okay.
And then we have homeschools that have probably about 5,000 in them. All the rest of the kids are in public school somewhere. So we want to concentrate on our public schools. I think yesterday, the new test came out. We've been 50th just about as long as I can remember. Yeah. And we started putting money into, we raised the teacher salaries. I want to raise them again this year.
Okay. And it's good news for teachers.
Well, they went from 50th to 30th to now, yesterday, 16th.
Talking about in the overall ranking.
Yeah. So when you think about this,
so you want to reward them for a job well done.
Well, we want to acknowledge it. They were doing a really good job, and I want to acknowledge it monetarily. So
what does that pay raise look like?
The last time we did one, it was about $150 to $200 million spread across a number of different teachers running somewhere.
Would that work out to about $2,000 a teacher?
No, it was a little bit more than that. I think it was a little bit more than that. Could anywhere from depending on a lot of other factors. But
sure.
But $2,000 or $3,000 per teacher would be a good start to me. Okay. I think that would be a real good start to tell these people that we want to raise them anyway. Their insurance has gone up and whatnot. But we also want to acknowledge, like you say, you're doing a really good job in a lot of places. And so we want to acknowledge that you're doing a good job. And there's some other holes we have, Richard, and you're skipping over my community college teachers. They have not had the raises that we've had in the undergraduate, and the same at the university system. So there's some other money, I think, that needs to go towards the teachers we have at community college.
So when you say our focus needs to be on public schools because that's where the majority of the students are, does that mean no universal school choice?
I don't see that being passed in the Senate. When I talk to my senators about that, there's just not the votes there for just everybody go wherever you want to go in private schools or whatever. They're just not in the votes there for that.
Delbert Hosemann, Lieutenant Governor. We will wrap up the conversation on the other side of this break. You're listening to Mornings with Richard Cross on SuperTalk Mississippi.
More of the best of Mornings with Richard Cross next.
Polyupa, Mississippi.
Encore presentation of the best of Mornings with Richard Cross.
We both knew it was just a matter of time. Living our dreams, oh, you on top.
Glad to be with you this morning. It is Mornings with Richard Cross on SuperTalk Mississippi. As is almost always the case when I get the chance to visit with the Lieutenant Governor, I have more questions than we have time for answers. So,
well, I'll come back. Just invite me back.
That's great. You have an open invitation.
Thank you. Finishing on that community college part, Richard, I think it's important that we have last dollar free tuition for community college. And we proposed that and passed it last year in the Senate, and it died in the House, and I want to bring it back. The 12 years that we're educating our children, much better now to 16th in the country, those 12 years still won't make us competitive in a worldwide economy. We need a 13th and a 14th year. A lot of that may be for technical skills that people then go work at the new Amazon AI or whatever, and others may be on more welders or carpenters or base skills or plumbers or HVAC or whatever. But that extra year is very important, I think, to upgrade and continue to upgrade our economic workforce. Our workforce needs to be competitive. Now, that's a draw for us in Mississippi. We're bringing in all this great industry. The governor's doing a great job. We're popping up all over, from Marshall County electric batteries to aluminum mills in Columbus to AI down all over Mississippi. People are coming here. We've got lower taxes. We've got great economy. We've got energy, which is a really big thing. And we're putting in 2 new plants. All of that's going on. But there's a limit to the workforce. We have to have an educated workforce. And to me, that comes with an additional work from the community college. And I've met with Accelerate, who does that kind of thing for the state of Mississippi. Remember, we reorganized that several years ago, and they're focused on high-need jobs. Sure. And I've also met with the community college system to actually get those two together on what a 13th year would look like for individuals. So there'd be no barrier to our young men and women getting an additional education year or two, or maybe even going to the 4 years as far as that goes.
For a long time, the community college system has been a beacon in Mississippi, and it may be more important today than it's ever been, specifically with what you're talking about, those skilled jobs, preparing skilled workers. I do want to ask you this. I know we were right up against the break when I asked you about the universal school choice, and you said that you don't think you've got the votes in the Senate and that you don't believe the money is there. Why is it, or how is it, that in looking at the exact same issue, you and your Senate colleagues see this so differently than they do on the other side of the hall? Because you're looking at the same balance sheet.
The balance sheet is one thing. The part of the success, Richard, that has occurred in Mississippi is at these various schools create a provincial attitude. For example, I've got a really great A schools. I was in 2 A schools yesterday afternoon, and then we were with Haley Barber last night on the coast, going back over Katrina 20 years ago. But I was with some of the people, and I was with the superintendent in Jackson County, and who has 3 high schools down there. And they are provincial. I mean, they've got it working down there. They have something called the Hope Group, where they take kids vote on a group of people to help them when they have a problem. Not the starting quarterback or the head cheerleader or something, but kids vote on a Hope Squad. And that Hope Squad comes to help them if they've got problems at home or broke up with a boyfriend or whatever they think they need to talk to somebody about. So that school district has created its own culture about that kind of thing and other things. And so when we talk about bringing somebody outside the culture, they call their senator and say, I got an A school here. It's going really well. And y'all have been giving us funds for that, and we want to run our A schools. And we're not necessarily wanting to take all the ones from Harrison County or the ones from here or there. So they see it, I think, as being disruptive and from a process that's working right now for these districts. Clinton, it doesn't, all over, DeSoto County, wherever they are, Tupelo, but a lot of those have Republican senators, and they listen to their superintendents and their teachers, and their superintendents and their teachers want to continue the culture that they've got in that school system, which has produced A schools. So when you do,
are you concerned about Mississippi being the only state in this region of the country that has not gone? I mean, we talked about economic development and how much good is happening and people are moving to the state, but when you look around us, the other states have chosen to go with that full school choice. Does that matter?
I don't know if those other states are 16th in the test scores. We just talked about this. I want to do what's best for the children in Mississippi. Mm-hmm. And so, I appreciate learning things from Arkansas or some of their kind of phasing one in, or wherever. Those are all good things to learn from and see as a map forward. But it's not necessarily effective for Mississippi or not. Now, we've got weak schools that I'm more concerned about than I am the ones that are all getting A's. I mean, leave those alone. They're doing great work. And look at the test scores. So I don't know if the rest of them are all 16th in the country or not. So I think some of this is going to be what works best for Mississippi, and then when you get past that, what works best for each one of the 140 districts we've got.
Lieutenant Governor Delbert Hosemann, I always appreciate your time. I promise next time we'll get to some of the housing accessibility issues that you've been focused on, and that. Reorganization of state government as well.
Yeah, we've got some really good things coming, Rich. I hope we'll get a chance to do that.
More of the best of Mornings with Richard Cross next. This is an encore presentation of the best of Mornings with Richard Cross.
So let it be. I couldn't stop it, so I let it be. I couldn't stop it, so I let it be.
text line. 601-879-4395 is the number. Looking for game-changing technology? Then you need C Spire on your team. 5G wireless, fiber home internet, and business IT solutions built as tough as your defense. Learn more at cspire.com. C Spire, inspired by you. First guest this morning is Christopher Green. He is a law professor that was at the University of Mississippi for a long time. He is transitioning to Columbus, Ohio, going to work at Ohio State moving forward. But, Christopher, you told us last time that we visited we could still call even though you were moving away. And I reached out to Alex on Friday. I was like, can we get Professor Green on? We've got stuff we need to talk about. The end of last week was quite the day for the United States Supreme Court.
Oh, it was. It was, we always get this. The law professors, we're so frequently traveling, unfortunately, so we're always waiting with bated breath at 9 a.m. Central, 10 Eastern for the Supreme Court to finish up what they're doing. And they finished with a little bit of a bang. I think maybe opinions differ about just how much of a bang. It was slightly more hyperventilating coverage in certain quarters than others. But this, Trump versus Casa case was, I think got a lot of the headlines. It's been a long time coming. I think people waiting for limits on these things, the universal injunction. So telling, a court telling the president or telling an agency, you can't do that thing at all with respect to anybody, not just the people before the court. And they say, well, there's an app for that. There's a class action. If you want to have a class action, get a bunch of people together with the same issue, do that. And you can't just have this nationwide injunction or universal injunction. So they put that limit, and it's really a limit on judicial power, not granting power to the president.
Yeah, and to me, that was by far the most interesting. You may disagree. You may think one of the other cases was a more interesting outcome. But I'd had a conversation with a former U.S. attorney, a former judge, kind of asking a little bit, trying to understand better the whole universal injunction thing. And he kind of went back and forth. He's like, yeah, generally speaking, you're not going to have a single district court make a ruling that applies nationwide, that the ruling is somewhat limited and should be kind of restricted to the plaintiffs. But in some cases, you will have rulings that are a little more wide-reaching. Supreme Court ultimately said no. The phrase that we have heard over and over and over is weaponizing the judicial system. And you've got these judges that are appointed by one administration, in this case, generally either the Biden or the Obama administrations, that were putting rulings in place that were temporarily putting a halt to executive orders that the President Trump was putting in place. What does all of this mean? I mean, I understand that at a micro level, it limits, what judges can do and put some judicial restraint there. But at more of a macro level, what does this mean going forward?
I guess the basic takeaway I get is that everybody is limited by the power that they get from the Constitution and statutes. So courts, I mean, the biggest takeaway, the striking argument was the dissent in the Trump v. Casa case saying, hey, you are complicit, majority, in the president doing all these unconstitutional things. And the majority responding, no, we're not complicit. We're not aiding him in doing it. We're not doing it ourselves. We are limiting our own power to do our job. Our job is resolving controversies. And we don't have a general roving commission to make sure that the constitutional system works. So that's the big takeaway. We have a system with divided power. It's very messy. I think rereading Federalist 51 about ambition countering ambition. We have lots and lots of very, very ambitious people, and we need to be able to restrain our own ambition to the extent we can and restrain the ambition of others in our branch of the government. So the Supreme Court was essentially restraining the powers of lower courts to do this kind of thing. The danger is the president is going to have slightly more leeway to possibly sometimes get away with things, but we have a system that prevents him from getting away with these things forever. I was really reminded of a passage in Man for All Seasons. So Robert Bolt has this line. Thomas More is talking to somebody, and somebody says, well, I wouldn't give the devil the benefit of law. And Moore says, well, I would, if you're, cutting down all the laws of England, going after the devil. Well, what are you going to do when he turns around and turns on you? If you think, well, what the president's doing is just so unconstitutional, we got to just go after him with all we've got and shoot our shot, making it clear in as many ways and for as many people as we can that what he's doing is outrageous. Well, that and 250 will get you a cup of coffee. I mean, that is not the way to uphold the rule of law. So I see it as, I always admire people who restrain their own power. So the George Washington not asserting power to do certain things as president, not staying in power. Those sorts of things are always, I think, what we need to admire more than going out and getting her done and being big, that kind of thing. There are dangers, in an American system. If somebody doesn't, jump in and save the day, there's a worry that other people are going to run roughshod. But I think self-denying assertions like this really deserve our praise and admiration.
In pop culture and in sports, we are used to nicknames and initials, right? Madonna, Prince, one word names, Tiger. If you hear the initials MJ, you immediately know that people are talking about Michael Jordan. I didn't know that we were going to get to that point in the Supreme Court, because we've got KBJ and ACB going after each other in an opinion and a dissent. And Ketanji Brown Jackson wrote a dissent that was about as sophomoric in terms of the language used in the dissent as anything we've seen from the Supreme Court through the years. You have read numerous Supreme Court cases. Maybe there are examples of this from the past where there have been open shots taken. I don't know that I have ever seen an opinion, though, where one justice basically said, if you're reading between the lines about another justice, you are stupid and we are going to ignore you. But I feel like that's what Amy Coney Barrett wrote about Ketanji Brown Jackson's dissent.
Well, you actually get that vibe more than you'd think. One of my professors, he said, when you get this spicy rhetoric back and forth, he said, you got to remember these folks they're kind of like 9 separate law firms, like little, very small law firms with 4 justices, some support staff, and the justice. And he says, well, some of this spicy stuff really might have been written by the clerks who don't really have the long-term friendship between these people as at stake in quite the same way. When it is in writing as opposed to face-to-face, it's there's a certain sort of emotional distance, but certainly Justice Scalia, actually when Justice Scalia passed away, Justice Thomas had this really, really funny, dramatic reading of all the times that Scalia had called Justice Thomas a nincompoop, basically. And I thought it was extraordinarily endearing that even the victim of these barbs was able to take such delight in getting it so spicily pronounced. I do not get the sense that maybe today or on Friday, Justice Jackson and Justice Barrett are enjoying it in quite the same way. But I think they did have a certain sort of restraint in how they were expressing themselves. Justices always say we all get along. We go to parties and we enjoy going to. Scalia and Ginsburg famously went to the opera together, and there was an opera about them, and that sort of thing is what they always say. I mean, these two women are going to be, if they health permitting, and God willing, they'll be on the court for a long time together. I don't think I think they will hold each other in respect. They will value each other's votes. Certainly, they enjoy having a unanimous court when they can get it. So I wouldn't think that they're we shouldn't see this as some sort of kind of intellectual catfight or something. But it was was a bit spicy. It was a bit spicy, certainly.
It was. It certainly was. I wish our time was longer this morning. I do appreciate you jumping on. Christopher Green, professor of law, now at the Ohio State University, formerly at Ole Miss. We'll talk soon. Thanks so much.
Take care. God bless you.
Mornings with Richard Cross.
More of the best of Mornings with Richard Cross.
For all your...
This is an encore presentation of the best of Mornings with Richard Cross.
Thanks for being with us. Back with you on Mornings with Richard Cross. SuperTalk Mississippi. This hour of the show is brought to you by MWG Employer Services. Running a business is tough, and if you're struggling with HR, benefits, and payroll, you're not alone. That's where MWG Employer Services comes in. They provide a full range of employer services, plus a custom plan that fits you. Give them a call today, 601-206-7966, or go to MWGEmployerServices.com. You can join the conversation on the C Spire text line. Your team has you covered on the field. C Spire has you covered everywhere else with the best technology for home, work, and on the go. Backed by local 24/7 customer support. Learn more at cspire.com. C Spire, inspired by you. My good friend Peter Costa joins, former governor with the New York Stock Exchange, market analyst with CNBC, and now semi-retired, and author of Costa's Corner, a newsletter that is free if you want it. You can get that into your inbox. You can get some of Peter's insight into all things happening in both the financial world, the political world, and occasionally his world on Long Island as well. Pete, what's up, buddy?
Not much, Richard. I'm sorry we missed each other last week, so it's good to see you.
Would have loved to have seen you, but I am happy to report that that baby girl made it back late last night after a good trip abroad, and it sure was good to get her back home.
Yeah, I'm sure. You know, Iceland can be tough.
Apparently, it was not so bad, at least from the stories I've heard so far.
Good.
Donald Trump has talked for a while about the key bank interest rate for the United States, and he has been relentless in his criticism of the Fed Chair Jerome Powell, saying that the rates are too high, that he was too slow to raise rates when Biden was in office, and there were some inflationary things that were happening, and has been too slow to lower rates on the backside. And yesterday, he posted a chart with central bank rates for countries all over the world, and it had the United States, at 4.5% down near the bottom of the chart, with a bunch of countries in the mid to upper ones in terms of percentage rates, and said this is where the United States should be. Is that a reasonable thought, to think that the United States kind of central bank interest rate should be at 1.75, 2, even 2.5, considering where it is now?
Well, 2.5% to me would be the target. I think that's very doable, very livable for everyone. Banks, banks are going to make money no matter what. But, for interest rates right now, the economy's expanded even with interest rates at 4.5%. So if you reduce them, I don't think there'll be any problem. I don't think we'll ever get to 1 point. I think you want a 1.25. That's a little, I have to say that might be a little bit of a stretch. But 2.5% to me, I think would be a target, given all the other factors that the Fed has to deal with. And I think, I'm not in the Fed's corner 100% because I think they blew it as far as, dealing with inflation early on. But, they don't have to move as fast as the president likes. They're looking at the president obviously is looking at a very big picture, but they're looking at something completely different, and he's a politician, he's a businessman, and there's no politics, or supposedly not politics, in the Fed's decisions. So, they're dealing with, getting unemployment to a level that's, livable, which they're not there yet, although it's not the worst we've ever seen. And inflation is coming down. It's coming down very slowly, which, anybody who has any kind of common sense would know that the inflation was not going to fall back quickly. So, 2.5% I think would be okay. And I think we will eventually get there, but it might take a couple of years. I'm not even sure that, Chairman Powell will be there when it gets to 2.5%. But I can tell you that Donald Trump probably will be, though.
You're not supposed to have politics and like selecting an all-star team for 9-year-old baseball, and yet it seems to creep in. So to think that the Fed is apolitical the way it espouses to be might be a little far-fetched. I mean, you mentioned that Powell might not be there. You get a message from Scott Bessent yesterday, the Treasury Secretary, saying that they are evaluating and perhaps we'll have some names soon for the next Fed chairman. It doesn't really work that way, though, does it?
No, it doesn't. And having that shadow, Fed governor, Fed chairman, that's not a good tactic. I think that you get closer to, is he going to be reappointed? I think his term runs out in 2026 at some point. I'm not sure if it is, but I think it's 2026. And, for a year, you don't want to have that hanging over your head. That, obviously he will ignore it, or at least he'll say he'll ignore it. But the reality of the situation is, they're going to second guess everything he does. And I don't know if that's really effective. I'm not a big fan of that. I heard that about a month and a half ago, and I was like, that's not in that department, not in the you're supposed to have that autonomous building that doesn't have to listen to the president or Congress or whoever else. They have to answer to him, but they don't have to listen to him. And then you start putting that on the table. That's not a good look. I don't think that was good strategy, and I hope that really doesn't come to fruition.
When you look at where the key bank rate is right now at 4.5%, and you hear the people saying it should be lower. Even you just a second ago saying 2.5% would be a great target rate, but it'll take some time to get there. What do you think the rationale is that Jerome Powell and the Fed are going with for keeping the interest rate as high as they are right now? And I say high, I guess relatively high, maybe not historically high, but higher than it has to be, or maybe higher than it needs to be. What's the rationale behind that?
Well, I think it starts with them being maybe overly conservative, and also they're getting a lot of cross signals. They do a lot of research, and I get the weekly or daily email blast from the Fed in St. Louis, and there's so much data that they. I
bet that's some riveting reading.
Well, no, actually, to be honest with you, they do a good job of making it almost. They dumb it down a little bit, and they know that there's a lot of different people reading it, and I'm just a layman, but they try to make it interesting, and they try to make it at least concise where you can understand what they're saying. But anyway, the Fed looks through a lot of data, and the data is, 1 month will look, oh, great, now we can start moving the needle a little bit on, inflation starting to move, unemployment's coming down. There's a million different things that keep, every time they think they've got it under control, it doesn't. And I do think that now that they've finally started to see both contract and get lower, I think that they can start moving a little more aggressively. Will they? I don't know. But I don't know what the rationale is. I think they're way too conservative. But, this is what we have, and you have to deal with it. And the economy it didn't sink because we had high interest rates. It didn't help.
Yeah. But,
over the course of the 5 years or 4.5 years, we had, relatively high rates, or 3 years actually. The economy never went into a recession other than when we had the pandemic, and that was very short. So
we'll hit on some other topics in a second. You got about a minute and a half till the break. In layman's terms, to use your words just from a second ago, explain the difference in the this key bank rate or the central bank rate and, for example, mortgage rates, because they're not the same thing. They're tied together, at least loosely, but they're not exactly the same thing.
Well, one is determined by the Fed, and the other one is determined more or less by supply and demand. In banks, when there's a lot of supply of cash and the interest rates are at a certain point, the banks can afford and are willing to lend that money at a lower rate to get more people in the door. I think it has to do with a little bit of tightening up of the money supply as far as banks are concerned. I don't think they're worried so much about defaults and delinquencies because I don't think that's really a major issue. But at one point it was. So that would be, one of the reasons why mortgage rates are higher, because they have to factor in the amount of delinquencies and defaults. That's not really an issue anymore. Now I think it's more about the availability of money and the pressure on the banks to loan that money. So it's a supply and demand issue. It's a little more complicated, but I think that's what it boils down to, that if you have a lot of cash available, the rates will be lower and they'll be closer to the key bank rate. Now there's a little bit less cash available and the rates are a little bit higher. The housing market is not, you're not seeing a tremendous amount of demand or increase in demand. So you would think that would be one of the reasons why the rates would be going up, but it's not. It's more about the supply of the money that the banks have available for loans.
This is a story about Billy Joe and Bobby Sue. Two young lovers with nothing better to do than sit around the house, get high and watch a tune.
More of the best of Mornings with Richard Cross
This
is an encore presentation of the best of Mornings with Richard Cross.
Thanks for joining us. It's Mornings with Richard Cross on SuperTalk Mississippi. As promised, Representative Robert Johnson joins us right now. He's the minority leader in the Mississippi House of Representatives. District 94 is his home territory. That's parts of Adams, Franklin, and Jefferson counties. He's also vice chair of the House State Affairs Committee. Representative Johnson, good morning to you.
Good morning.
Appreciate some of your time today. I'd love to start out by getting your reaction to what the news that has dominated the headlines for the last couple of days. What were you doing Saturday night when you heard the news that the United States had bombed the nuclear sites in Iran, and what's your reaction?
I was sitting down watching television with my wife, and we saw the news flash came across, and my reaction is, I would have liked for us not to have gotten involved so early. It appeared to me that Israel had it fully under control. They are militarily superior to Iran. They had initiated the first strikes. They had identified the nuclear storage facilities or wherever the research was going on, and they had the full support of the United States behind them. And I just think that they had displayed that they were the dominant force in that conflict. And I just thought the extra from the United States was unnecessary. So I just don't like the idea of us probably escalating something that I think that it appeared to me, as I followed the news, that the Israel with their allies, including the United States, had full control of.
Well, and it's certainly going to be interesting to see whether it's escalation or if this is kind of the beginning of the end for Iran. Although there's so much unknown, I think only time will tell in terms of some of
the... I mean, historically, this kind of action, it always ends in escalation. I just hope that I hope that the president is right. I hope that if these attacks mean that this is the end of the Iran that apparently the people who live in Iran would like to see a change in leadership. And maybe if that happens, there will be there'll be more peace talks and things moving forward.
Yeah. And my hope is, there's been so much talk about regime change, is that if that happens, that's because the Iranian people do it, not because we get into some nation-building program, because we're not good at that. We've seen that over and over.
I agree.
Yeah,
I agree.
Big picture before we kind of jump into some more local stuff. In terms of the state of the Democrat Party right now, the Democratic Party, both here in Mississippi and nationally, I have said a number of times, and I'd be really, really intrigued to hear your take on this. I don't see the Democrats in Mississippi as being nearly aligned as with some of the national Democrats or California Democrats as some people do. What is your take on that? Is it all Democrats are the same regardless of where they live, or is there a difference between being a Democrat in Mississippi and being a Democrat at either the national level or at one of the really, really liberal states?
Yeah, well, I used to have this conversation with Paul. All Republicans are alike. Democrats are all over the place. And so we have a very hard time of sticking to script. And that's because...
Wait, you said all Republicans are alike?
All of them. They all read from the same page. You talk to one. Even when they disagree with the Republican Party, they're very good at holding the party line. Democrats are a lot different. So, and I say that a little bit tongue-in-cheek, but mostly seriously. That's been my experience. But anyway...
Thomas Massey might like a word otherwise.
Yeah. Look, you're right. You know, one of the biggest problems that we faced as a state party when we're trying to elect a president in the last gubernatorial race, one of the biggest problems we had was trying to make the people who sent a lot of resources down here, a lot of people here, say, look, wait, the national politics are not Mississippi Democrats politics. Those things that you all may highlight and want to talk about, that's not what we want to talk about. What we want to talk about are the things that make people's lives better. People want better neighborhoods. They want better schools. They want better opportunity for their children who end up moving away, who we'd rather see stay here. And that involves making sure that we fully fund infrastructure. We fully fund public education. We take as a high priority our teachers and our policemen and our first responders. Those are the people that make life better every day. And the other things are making sure that your water system is working and your roads are passable. So those are the things that Mississippi Democrats try to focus on and make sure we get done. National Democrats are more philosophical, more social issue related. That is just not where it is for us. When you're in a state that has the highest poverty level, the lowest per capita income, the slowest growth in gross domestic product, when you in a state like that, what you want to concentrate on is making sure that you invest in all our natural resources and the things that make this state grow. That's what Democrats care about here. And that's what national Democrats ought to care about. Look, the last 4 or 5 years, we had some of the best years that we have enjoyed because national Democrats understood, like with the infrastructure bill and the things that we need that are important in small rural communities. That money came to Mississippi and we made use of it. Not as good a use as I'd like to have seen, but that was a big boost to our economy and to our hope and our prospect. Those are things that matter. But the rest of this stuff that they get involved in, we're not on the same page on a lot of it.
You say you would have liked to have seen Mississippi make better use of some of the money that came our way. How so?
I happen to be one of the people who represent areas west of I-55 and along the river. We seem to spend the vast majority of our money in places that don't really need it. Madison County, DeSoto County, the Gulf Coast, all the areas that are prosperous right now, that are doing well because we invested in those areas. And some people say, well, DeSoto County is growing at such a great rate. We need to invest some money in. Yeah, to a certain extent. But do you neglect areas like Washington County and LaFleur County and Sharkey and Issaquena? And some people say, well, those communities, they're dying. They're dying because we have not in the last 30 years made any real purposeful investment in those areas. And I'm not talking about giving money away. I'm talking about making sure that, there are not 6 bridges that you can't pass in between LaFleur, Washington, and Bolivar counties, or that highways are not up to par, or that when you say, well, you need to have your industrial parks up, fortified in a way that will attract industry, but you don't have any really manufacturing or economic base, so you don't have any ad valorem tax to support that kind of instruction. But the governor has a program wisely that provides that kind of support. But hey, you need matching money to do it, but we don't have the matching money. You need to look at where your weaknesses are and try to strengthen those. And we don't do that. We do what's easy, what's popular. I'm a lawyer. We always talk about the cases that come into your office that, hey, this is a slam dunk. This is the one I want to take. Nobody wants to take the tough cases. Nobody wants to take the case that you're going to have to spend a lot of time working and invest a lot of money in, and the payback may not be as good. But that's the tough decision you have to make. And that's what we didn't do. And that's what we continued not to do.
All right, so let me ask you this. I mean, I will give you that there's some responsibility at the state level for that. But most of our congressional delegation in Washington can point to projects that have been funded in their home districts, money that they have fought to be allocated for. Why has Benny Thompson not been able to do that for his district?
That's not true. The money that those congressional look, Michael Guest can tout money that was spent in his district, but the money that was spent in his district, he voted against. That was ARPA money, that was infrastructure money. Every one of those pieces of federal legislation he voted against. You know who voted for them, who made sure they were passed? Benny Thompson did. But this is the way the federal money works. You don't send the money just to your district. You send it to the state to be allocated in different areas. Those bills were not written to say, hey, we're going to send $2.2 billion to the state of Mississippi, and it has to be spent in the 2nd Congressional District because I voted for it. Michael Guest voted against it. Trent Kelly voted against it. Whoever was a representative on the coast at that time voted against it. Sidney Hyde-Smith voted against it, and Roger Wicker voted against it. And Roger Wicker voted for the federal money that was helpful for health care and those at least he had the wisdom and the wherewithal to do that. But every Republican federal representative or senator we have voted against every federal program that was sending money to the state of Mississippi. But that money came in spite of them. And got spent in their districts.
Robert Johnson is my guest, Representative Roger Johnson. He is House of Representatives Minority Leader in the state. We're going to take a quick time out. When we come back, we'll talk a little bit about the special session. Some strong statements coming out of the leadership from the Democrat side before that special session with their frustration with the budget process. We'll talk about that when we come back. Robert Johnson is my guest. This is Mornings with Richard Cross, SuperTalk Mississippi, streaming at supertalk.fm and SuperTalk TV.
More of the best of Mornings with Richard Cross, next.
If you're feeling anxious,
An encore presentation of the best of Mornings with Richard Cross.
We were talking earlier about the Strait of Hormuz and how that is a potential threat to the United States. China has issued a warning to Iran after threats to close the Strait of Hormuz. They said the Persian Gulf and nearby waters are vital trade corridors. They must be kept stable and free from disruption. So that may throw a kink into Iran's plans just a little bit. Representative Robert Johnson is joining me this morning. It's Mornings with Richard Cross on SuperTalk Mississippi. A lot of different directions that we could go, but I want to give you, I want to hear from you. I know the statement that came out back around the opening of the special session. You and some of your colleagues were very frustrated with not being included in the budget process. I asked a number of people about that. I said, is this just politics, or is there something else that is at play? Generally speaking, the answer I got was that it was just politics. From your perspective, Democrats, certainly Democrat leadership, not being included in the budget process, other than just kind of a heads up, here's what we're doing, that seemed to strike you negatively as we sit here a month or so removed. Where are you now?
Well, I don't. It's interesting that somebody would say it was just politics, because I spent a great deal of time, and if you talk to Republicans individually, the people I serve with in the House, they were equally frustrated. And it wasn't so much. I think the statement that we wanted to be included, I think that's generally. I never said that. What I said was I would like to have had an opportunity to at least read and understand what was in some of those budget bills. That's all I asked for, and I asked for that. When the speaker got elected, when Jason White got elected last year, he, to his credit, one of the things that he said he wanted to make sure, and I think he said it on your program, is that no legislators would be left out of the budget process, that he would make sure that we got the appropriation bills in enough time to look through them and know what we were voting for. Look, we have a 7.23 some odd amount of budget. 90% of what's in there, I really don't have to look at. I'm for it. I'm voting for it. I think that the budget processes, the people, our leaders in the House and the Senate have done a pretty good job of making sure, been good stewards of the money. But there are things that I think if you put 122 eyes on it, that we would make fewer mistakes. We'll make sure that we knew who we were voting for. That's all I asked for. That's all we asked for. When you consider that you were just talking about the money, federal money that was spent. We voted for bills. We spent federal money in a disproportionate amount in certain areas than in other areas. And if we'd had a chance to look at that, I think there would have been a coalition of Democrats and Republicans who would have said, hey, wait, I didn't know you were spending it that way. We'd like to do it this way. And I'm going to tell you that to a person, I didn't talk to anybody on the House floor that didn't say, hey, yeah, you're right. I kind of would like to know what I'm voting on.
And I think the people that said, oh, it's just politics, were referencing more not specifically this instance, but it's kind of the way the Democrats operated for a really long time when they were in power in the Mississippi House and Senate before, a dozen years ago when it kind of flipped to Republican. I don't think it was specifically about this issue. And by the way, I agreed with you on this show that, hey, you got to let everybody see the bill before you vote on it, even if it is a compressed timeline. That didn't make a lot of sense to me. Is there a specific instance that you can point to where you talk about money being disproportionately spent in one area versus another?
Yeah. I don't, certain areas that are represented by certain chairmen in the state without, it's been beat to death, but it's, we literally, there's one county that got $38 million when their county that didn't get anything. In one session. And I don't begrudge anybody an opportunity to have that happen. I just think that a case could have been made if this is happening like that, then maybe we need to go back and look at if we have money left over, we could spend more money helping economic development and infrastructure in other places as well. It's not the idea that place that's fine, but we had the money to spend in other places, but people were holding it and using it as political capital as opposed to just being an equal distribution of money. Look, Representative Muriel Scott from Jones County introduced an amendment to say, look, you keep talking about how flush we are with money. Why don't we take $122 million and spend $1 million in everybody's district? There are places that didn't get $200,000. Just spend $1 million in everybody's district. It may not be $1 million may not mean a lot to Madison County, but it would mean the world to Issaquah County. It would mean the world to Jefferson County. It would do a whole lot of good instead of saying, well, what do you think? What are you going to do with it? Where are you going to spend it? When they spend money hand over feet in other places without any real justification for it. We gave $10 million to a town that has about 15,000 people.
Who was that?
Downtown renovation. I can't remember the name of it. Yeah, somewhere in northwest Mississippi.
Representative Robert Johnson.
If you spent $10 million in Fayette, it would be a mecca. You would change the world. So I'm just saying. And this, let me go back to your original point about this saying policies.
We got 20 seconds till the break.
Okay, 30 years in the legislature. I served under Democratic leadership and Republican leadership. It wasn't until the last 12 or 13 years that it's only Democrats and Republicans. And it started with, national Republican leadership in the state.
Representative Robert Johnson, he's the minority leader in the House. I look forward to visiting with you again soon. Thank you, my friend.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you for listening to the Best of Mornings with Richard Cross.
A SuperTalk Mississippi Media production.